think I just had a very nice sort of joyful start to dance without the pressure being on. And I was 10 years old, so it was quite late actually to start a sort of classical training. But I got serious after a couple of years, and then from there it just sort of built and built, and I got the bug for dancing and I wanted to do it all the time. But there weren't really any sort of schools that I could in terms of my dance form. And so it was very much about going from group class to private classes. And then I went to regular university and dance sort of fell to the back burner of things. And during university, I got invited to be in a dance company after attending a workshop or something, so they spotted me through there. And I took a sabbatical from university and never went back. And so that's how my professional career started. So I actually studied medicine at university in Nottingham, and sometime during my third year at the course, I actually got invited to audition for Cirque du Soleil for one of their productions. And it was a very sort of whirlwind of a process. They needed to know within 2 weeks if I would take that role, and I hadn't finished my third year yet, so I wouldn't have gotten my intercalated degree, and it was just a big sort of drama in my mind. And I said no to them, and then I thought, this is an amazing opportunity, I can't say no. So I turned around and said yes, but by that time they had sourced someone else. So in my mind, I was always sort of prepared to have left at that point. And that's when I was invited by another choreographer to be in their company in their first sort of year of touring and the first year of their, becoming a company. And so I requested a sabbatical from my university, and which they gave me, and they said I could go back after a year. I danced for a year, toured, and then at the end of that year I thought I'd like to do the next year, so I got a second sabbatical, knowing that if it really wasn't right for me in dance, I could go back. And after 2 years of touring, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. So it wasn't even necessarily, oh, I'm leaving everything, I'm going into dance. I did have a sort of easier segue into it, knowing that if it really didn't work out, I had something to go back to. But it also allowed me to fully go into something and not sort of half head in one thing, half head in something else, but I could immerse myself as a freelance dancer. Intellectually, dancers must know that this career isn't stable financially or otherwise. Injury is always a possibility, that you have to stop at some point if your body will take its course. But I think there's a level of ignorant bliss in there too. I don't ever remember tangibly thinking, in this many years I might have to face this sort of thing. What will happen when I can't dance anymore and I put all my eggs in one basket? I never thought of any of that. It kind of just went in head first and took each step and each hurdle as it came. And I think so I didn't come from a conservatoire teaching or anything. It was very much a baptism of fire for me to become a professional dancer and learning on the job. But I know that in schools now, dance schools now, they give a lot of preparation, support for auditions or applying to the Arts Council, or all of those sorts of things. I didn't have any of that starting out. And even if I did have that understanding and knowledge, and now I do pass on some of this information to new dancers that are coming through, especially Bharatanatyam dancers, because we don't have these formalized routes of professionalization, that you can say it till the cows come home, that it's difficult and that, all of the other pitfalls of it. But if you really want to do it, you just do it. You find a way. So the last time I performed was a solo on the Sadler's Wells main stage, and I think I'm bonkers for putting myself through that, but it is something I'm glad I did. And it took its toll on my body. I had to manage the pain of my knee and just the fact of running a giant company at that point, putting my largest work to date on that stage for the first time. So it was a lot of pressure all around, but I wouldn't change it. I'm glad I did it. But right now what I'm doing is I'm teaching the things that I was in and that are still, I think, still have life left to perform and present to audiences, to other dancers, so that I'm just handing over that baton. Knowing that, you know, if I do have a chance to get my knee better and it actually works, that I still have the capacity to do those things. I feel I have something to offer still as a performer. It may not be at the sort of physical peak, but I think in terms of the expressional and the emotional sort of connection, I do have something to offer still, and I'm trying to understand what kind of work, you know, will showcase that. I don't get invited to be a performer as much, if at all, with other people like I used to, because I think people see me now as a choreographer and a director of my companies, and that's what I'm invited to do externally, instead of being a performer, which was what my earlier career was. So I know if I need to perform, and if I want to, it's likely to be through something I create through my company, that then again I will be thinking, what suits me at this time of my life, what do I still have to offer, what will challenge me, but also, you know, not damage my body and work with where I'm at. Transition out of dance, if you're going into another sort of career, is definitely bigger. I was making work from the age of 25, so very early in my professional career. I started dance professionally at 23, so that was already fairly late in the grand scheme of things. And so I had been creating things. It hadn't been at scale or necessarily very resourced, but I had that way of working always part of my dance practice, both as a performer but also as a dance artist, more in a more rounded way. I don't feel necessarily I've transitioned out of dance into a completely new space where I've had to start from scratch again. It was always there, but there is a, you know, it's more of a leadership transition as well. It's not just an artistic one. Becoming a choreographer is more of a leadership role, becoming the director of my company and the things that come with that. Also, you know, mentoring and supporting younger artists, that's become a, you know, more involved and resourced part of my work. As well as choreographing externally outside of my form with other organisations. I've worked with the Grange Park Opera, now Birmingham Royal Ballet. I've worked with BBC Young Dancer and theatre companies as a movement director. So it's a natural transition, I think, as people get to know you more doing the choreographic practice, you get invited more to do that. When I was performing, I was invited more to do performance work. There was never really a stop and a start. They both existed, and then one just sort of went from underneath to on top in terms of the visibility and what I was asked to do. So I don't feel like I'm starting from scratch, but I definitely feel that I'm able to envision bigger and more different things because resource shifts and experience shifts and trust in your work shifts. So I discovered DCD through a friend, and at that point I really didn't know anything about it. I didn't think that I was a sort of dancer that would be supported by them, because it felt like it was very much for the big companies and the ballet companies, and I didn't know, as someone that was from such a niche form and background with not such a sort of, you know, 8 years of stable work or that kind of thing as a gigging dancer or in a company, I wasn't sure if they would even support me. But, you know, it was at a time, I think, I don't know if DCD were making a transition or it was just about opening up their visibility to different spaces. So I just took a punt on one of the grants and I met with DCD and they were really supportive, and it was clear that, you know, it was almost a hidden gem, I think. It was just about the visibility in different worlds that they maybe didn't have at that point, and I'm glad that a friend had told me about it. And I got some money to go to film school because I wanted to just increase my skill set. I think one of the things that was in my mind at that point wasn't necessarily transitioning out of dance, but was to give me a wider set of tools in order to envision dance in other ways, as well as other things that I could do with film. And more than learning to know the various skills that are involved in different kinds of filmmaking, to be that, I wanted to know how to communicate with people who did that, so that I would be able to speak the same language with an editor or a director or a cinematographer and those sorts of things. So I learned very loosely what I could do, and I could edit things together. And I made a few short films, and it was really fun. I still love doing that. When I have time, it's part of the plan. And I think always part of the vision of things, because it just makes you see things differently with a different set of tools. But yeah, they really supported me with that. And then I continued the relationship as someone on their equity, diversity and inclusion working group. So I felt I could offer something, of my experience, but also having been someone, especially around, the murder of George Floyd, that a lot of people started sort of needing support and had reached out to me. And I was trying to negotiate that way of offering support, but also, that's labor. And it was nice to be paid to do that work in a proper way, to be able to contribute to that. And DCD, I applied to that role and I got it, and we did it for 2 years. And now I have my own company. We are doing talent development work, where I've been in contact with DCD to connect some of the young mentees to work with their life coaching and support them through that. So it's in many different ways that DCD and I have sort of come together and done various things. Obviously, DCD have worked with the BBC Young Dancers, and I've been on that program as a mentor, as a choreographer. And so there's just a lot of connections and threads that bring DCD and I together. It's clear to see that the impact that DCD has had on many, many dancers, especially at that sort of really vulnerable time of needing to change path. And, that's a scary thing for anybody changing career, let alone someone that's in such a, precarious space already, and then having to, not necessarily having been in a job that allows you to have savings and those things and use that to change career. But it's a scary time on so many levels. You feel the mortality of your body, if that's the reason why you're changing career. Maybe, the arts kind of gets inside your DNA. It becomes you. It defines you in many ways. And so to change that, you're changing your identity in so many ways. And I think that what DCD offers, it's so valuable, because sometimes I think we don't know what we need because we're just so used to getting on with it. And until that thing is there, you didn't know what you were missing. But that doesn't make it any less important. Even if people could function, they shouldn't have to. And I think one thing I said at a DCD event was actually, I said it, and I said, I'm resilient. And then I said, actually, no, that's not what I want to be. I don't just want to survive, I want to thrive. And that's, I think, one of the big impacts of something like DCD is we can survive. We're like made of tough stuff in the dance world. But we want to thrive, and we work very hard, and I think it's okay to want some ease and support and space and resource. And I think that's what DCD offer. The way that I've had to work as a freelance dancer, obviously my understanding of my body and to, manage those physical things. Alongside that comes having to manage a bunch of other things, and those sorts of skills are extremely transferable, absolutely extremely transferable. And it's just more about unlocking some of the confidence to do that when you're stepping out of dance. Whereas I think the additional things that are specific to dancers that maybe will benefit other types of work, I don't know, it's difficult to put into words, I think, because the relationship we have to our bodies is very specific. And I think we take it for granted as dancers that actually the majority of the population don't have that relationship with their own bodies. And when I say bodies, I don't just mean kind of like the arms and legs and the muscles and those sorts of things, but like a real visceral understanding of feeling and connecting and being around other people. And the compassion that hopefully can come from something like that. Doesn't always translate. We are human beings. We also, get angry and do bad things to our bodies as well. But that innate understanding and relationship to it, I think, is something that we do offer different worlds. Maybe not in the ways that we even know sometimes. I don't know how you would do that in the world of law or something else completely unrelated to dance. But we're really rich, rounded people because we have that access to our bodies and hearts and minds in this particular way. And that is unique to us in dance. My feeling has always been, I don't want to not do something because I'm afraid, because that to me isn't a good enough reason. That's just us talking ourselves out of things that could be quite incredible. And so fear needs to be managed, and being overwhelmed needs to be managed, but it can be, absolutely, and we do it all the time without realizing. So it's remembering that we can do those things, and it's step by step. And the other biggest thing is, if you don't like the thing you've changed to, it's not the end of the world. We have to remember what privilege we come with, especially in the arts, to be able to do the arts. I haven't come from a wealthy family or money. I've worked my way up into whatever I've got. I've always said to myself, that in itself is a privilege. And so I don't lay in one end of the spectrum of that. None of us generally tend to, especially in the arts. I think we need to be honest around the fact that doing it in the first place already is a privilege. And some have more and some have less, but usually we're on some grade of that spectrum. And to use that wisely and joyfully, and to know that actually if you made a choice and to do something else, yes, you might have put money into it, time into it, energy, resource. But if you really hate it, you can change it. Try it for a bit, give it a good go. It's not the end of the world if it's not right. Find something else.